As we enter into this sacred time, may we, just for now, let go of any concerns we may have brought with us of the past or the future, arriving here in this moment. Here, let us open our minds to teachings from long ago times and far away places. Let us open our hearts as we consider the ways this ancient wisdom might speak to us in the here and the now. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to rise in body or spirit to join our voices in our opening hymn, number 298 in the gray hymnal, Wake Now My Senses. We will sing verses 1 through 3. May this chalice, an empty cup, ready to hold the flame of our Unitarian Universalist faith, serve as a reminder to hold ourselves empty and open, ready to be filled with infinite possibilities. This morning, we open ourselves to receive the flame of ancient wisdom, that it might guide our minds and spirits in these modern times, so that we too may embody the light. Our story this morning, oh good, got some takers. Yay. Come on up, you're welcome. Yeah. You want to see pictures too? Yes. Hi. So our story today is called Voyage Voyage to the Sun, the Tao Te Ching for Children. And it starts with a little story. Who is Lao-tzu? Some time ago in a small town, a beautiful elderly woman who wore a flowing silk caftan came to visit the parents of two curious children. Her name was Lao-tzu. Her voice was soft like a song. The family sat in the garden beside the mint plants and old statue. The adults drank oolong tea and the children had lemonade. And these are some of the stories that Lao-tzu told that family. I'm just going to do a few of them today. This one is called Water in a Cup. Being good is to become like water in a cup. Water spills out everywhere but goes into any container. All the plants grow because of water, and people need water to live. Water is in many places, even locations people don't want to go. The Tao is like the rain, the rivers, and the ocean. Lao-tzu said, "Let me help you understand. Here are some things that will help you know. When you go to find a place to live, live near the ground so you can garden. Watch the plants. See what is happening outside. Be close to the people on the street. When you see fights, try to stand back and think. Try to figure out if one person is bullying and mean. In school and home, try to figure out what you really like. What kind of toys do you think are fun? What kind of hobbies will you have? Find time for what really interests you. When you are yourself and realize you are just fine, others will think that too." Where is the Tao? If you look for it, you cannot see it. If you listen, you will not be able to hear it. If you try to hold it, you cannot touch it. Why would that be? It does not make any sense. Because even though the Tao exists in the sky, the Tao is not a bright star. Even though the Tao exists in the deep earth, the Tao is not the dark. The Tao is everywhere, yet most people do not see it. It looks like nothing. The Tao is hard to see. It is tricky to try to understand. Sometimes it is better just to relax, do your schoolwork, listen to your parents, be nice to others, and have fun with your friends. 3 things. Lao-tzu, the elegant lady, stood up to go look at a butterfly on a flower. She said she had 3 things she wanted us to know. 1, try to understand what is natural. The birds, the trees, growing up, learning, fun with your family and friends. 2, try to be patient with everyone, even when they are angry or yell. 3, practice compassion with everyone. Be understanding and kind, even if you are the only one who is. Thanks for listening. please remain seated for our prayer hymn, number 398 in the gray hymnal, To See the World. In the silence that follows the spoken prayer, you are invited to light a candle for any joys or concerns you hold in your heart this morning. Spirit of life and love, eternal presence that flows through all things, we seek to learn from that eternal, infinite, unnameable source of all, the mystery that some have known as the Tao. Not that we may understand it so much as to live it. In the spirit of Tao, may we live with simplicity in actions and thoughts, returning to the source of being. May we live with patience toward both friends and enemies, finding accord with the way things are. May we live with compassion toward ourselves and others, reconciling all beings in the world. May it be so, and amen. I light a candle for the joys and concerns of those beloveds joining us virtually, and I light a candle for all else that we hold in our hearts and our minds this morning. If your heart is hurting, know that your community is here to help, as is Reverend Jane. Please reach out with any needs. In the words of Reverend Victoria Weinstein, a former minister of Channing Memorial Church, the purpose of the church is to encourage all who gather there to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. For those of you watching the service online, you may contribute to a virtual offering plate using the donate button on our website or by mailing a check to the church office. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. For all that you give and all that you do for our church community and its wider concerns, we give thanks. Chapter 67, Tao Te Ching by Lao-tzu, translated by Stephen Mitchell. Some say that my teaching is nonsense. Others call it lofty but impractical. But to those who have looked inside themselves, this nonsense makes perfect sense. And to those who put it into practice, this loftiness has roots that go deep. I have just three things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These three are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, you accord yourself with the way things are. Compassionate toward yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. And from chapter 2. Therefore the master acts without doing anything, and teaches without saying anything. Things arise, and she lets them come. Things disappear, and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. I invite you to rise in body or spirit to join our voices in hymn 353, Golden Breaks the Dawn. How can ancient concepts of Taoism help us with our spiritual life in today's world? This was the question posed by Julia, the top bidder for the coveted auction sermon. Okay, well, the mildly desirable worship associate version of the auction sermon. And here it is. Tao Te Ching was written by the philosopher Lao-tzu in the 6th century BCE. To answer Julia's question about its applicability in modern times, I decided to take the Tao for a test drive. Yes, it's an older model, but let's give it a go. I read this copy of the Tao Te Ching, and I analyzed its basic core, the specs of the vehicle, you might say. And in studying the Tao, I learned that this intellectual approach is actually not at all the way to go about it. And Gabby has a funny story she can tell you about that, too. She didn't know I was going to say that, so sorry. The real test drive, then, was to look at my life and how the principles seem to apply. Looking at what spiritual lessons the 6th century BCE Tao might have for me in the 21st century CE. So, what is this car we're about to start driving? What is the Tao? From the user's manual, Tao Te Ching, chapter 25. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. For lack of a better name, I call it the Tao. It flows through all things, inside and outside, and returns to the origin of all things. Now, Lao-tzu actually discourages talking about the Tao, yet in sharing this sermon with you, that is precisely what I have to do. I don't feel so bad, though. Translator Stephen Mitchell pointed out the work of poet and stand-up comedian Po Chui, who wrote, "He who talks doesn't know. He who knows doesn't talk." That's what Lao-tzu taught us in a book of 5,000 words. If he was the one who knew, how could he have been such a blabbermouth? End quote. Well, I'll forgive Lao-tzu for being a blabbermouth as he tries to explain the Tao, as I hope you'll forgive me. As far as identifying the parts of the vehicle, the big themes in defining the Tao seem to be as follows. The Tao is an eternal, infinite, unnameable mystery. Everything comes from nothing, from the Tao. The Tao, thus, is like the eternal void filled with infinite possibilities. The Tao doesn't take sides. Given those very bare-bones specs of what the Tao is, the bulk of the owner's manual, the Tao Te Ching, is about basic operations. So, as far as basic operations of Taoism, many of its prescriptions for living are about what not to do. Here are the big themes as I saw them. Number 1, non-doing. This includes letting things happen, living in harmony with nature, allowing what is, allowing people to be who they are, flexibility. And one of the central ideas here of non-doing is that trying to do stuff and fix things actually messes things up. Number 2, non-attachment. This includes not being attached to outcomes, to thoughts and ideas, to people, to possessions. It also includes non-judgment and not overvaluing certain things or people. Number 3, not knowing. In addition to being unattached to thoughts, this also includes stepping back from your own mind, trusting inner vision, and that appeal to use the Tao, don't talk about it. Number 4, non-violence. This includes the values of peace, harmony, and balance, as well as the concept that fear is an illusion. Number 5, contentment. One positively stated theme in the Tao Te Ching is that of contentment. Quote, "Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you." End quote. Nonetheless, ideas on contentment too include a couple of don'ts. Don't try to compete. And then also the idea that we don't need to travel. one of the few points where I took exception, especially after learning that Lao-tzu himself moved away from his country when it was in decline. So now for the true test drive. Let's get behind the wheel here. How have the ancient concepts of Taoism helped me with my spiritual life in today's world? At the end of chapter 1 of Tao Te Ching, Lao-tzu writes, "Only in being lived by the Tao can you be truly yourself." Being lived by the Tao. Translator Stephen Mitchell offers an anecdote of the little boy who, when his mother got annoyed and said, "Stop sneezing," answered, "I'm not sneezing, it's sneezing me." Likewise, I feel that I'm not writing this sermon, it's writing me. I'm not driving the Tao, it's driving me. How and where has the Tao been driving me this summer? Here are some of the principles that have most resonated with me. I'll start with 3 key Taoist principles described nicely in the 3 Things chapter from our story for all ages. 1, try to understand what is natural: the birds, the trees, growing up, learning, fun with your family and friends. 2, try to be patient with everyone, even when they are angry or yell. 3, practice compassion with everyone. Be understanding and kind, even if you are the only one who is. Tao Te Ching chapter 67, one of today's readings, sums this up as follows. I have just 3 things to teach: simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Here's something else that resonated from chapter 10. Can you cleanse your inner vision until you see nothing but the light? Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will? Can you deal with the most vital matters by letting events take their course? Chapter 2, the other of today's readings, further speaks to non-doing and non-attachment. Therefore, the master acts without doing anything and teaches without saying anything. Things arise and she lets them come. Things disappear and she lets them go. She has but doesn't possess, acts but doesn't expect. When her work is done, she forgets it. That is why it lasts forever. Now for a few examples of how the Tao has been living me. These often show up in noticing the ways that I am not living the Tao and then laughing at myself. One very specific example is my relationship with the weather. I like to know the weather forecast sometimes as much as 10 days ahead, but more typically the hourly forecast as a way to plan my day. Even when I want to know the current conditions, my tendency is to check the weather app versus opening a door and stepping outside. Lao-tzu would have scoffed at my reliance on this so-called labor-saving machine. Even during my morning walk, as I am having a direct experience of the weather, I often feel compelled to confer with the weather app to quantify it. The air feels heavy, oppressive. 92% humidity? That seems about right. It feels breezy. How many miles per hour is that? Only 3? Are you sure? Sometimes I want to argue with the weather app. Current conditions sunny, you say. Obviously it's raining right now. So this is just one specific example of how I generally seek to compare, clarify, or confirm my experience with some outer reality. Although I'm always a work in progress, I have been somewhat more successful in living the Tao, or letting the Tao live me, in my relationships. Learning to let people be who they are. Letting my husband have a bad day at work, and treating him with compassion and support without letting his sour mood bring me down. Letting my daughter cry over something that has been weighing on her, not trying to fix it or solve it, or even trying to make her feel better, just sitting with her in empathy and letting her feel the sadness or frustration. Letting my son do the prep work for a medical lab in the way that he chooses. Noticing my urge to step in and micromanage, catching myself and allowing him to find his own way, stepping in only when it seemed absolutely necessary, forgiving myself for stepping in, and once again, stepping out of the way. Like I said, a work in progress. Simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. A way that I'm really a work in progress with the spiritual teachings of the Tao is in the way of non-doing called Wu Wei, W-U-W-E-I. I'm certainly not the most productive being on the planet, but still, I like to get things done. I have that desire of wanting to make things happen. Just the other night, my husband and I were talking about how we like our checklists and getting things done. We reflected on how easy it is, though, to slip into the trap of becoming more of a human doing than a human being. Checking off tasks on a list instills such a sense of accomplishment. Heck, I use a checklist and a spreadsheet to prepare for the Sunday service. Nonetheless, I am inspired by the Tao Te Ching, chapter 27. A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent upon arriving. A good artist lets his intuition lead him wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of concepts and keeps his mind open to what is. Thus, the master is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. He is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. This is called embodying the light. Zero waste. That's a modern movement that moves me. My fellow members of Clearing as a Spiritual Practice Circle can attest that that is one of my aspirations. Although I've applied that mostly to stuff, the Tao has me looking broader and deeper. She is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. Wow, could that apply to me? She is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. Could I ever be that master? Ideas like this and others that I've read this summer in the ancient Tao Te Ching drive me forward in my spiritual life as I apply it to my daily living right here, right now, in the summer of 2024 CE. In summing up my test drive of the Tao, here is my review. Designed by Taoist philosopher Lao-tzu in the 6th century BCE, the Tao Te Ching is an older model, yes, but one is certainly worth consideration. Designed to be a practical vehicle, the Tao is nonetheless an attractive model. Its beauty is in its simplicity. Neither gas nor electric, the Tao is kinetically self-powered. That's right, you pedal it. Its range is therefore as far as you want to take it. However, the Tao is designed with the understanding that you won't need to travel far because you already have all that you need within reach. This compact model doesn't hold other passengers or cargo because you really don't need those attachments. But don't worry about companionship. You can ride alongside your fellow travelers and lead by example rather than by driving the bus. Let's face it, as a vehicle body design, the Tao is basically a bicycle. As with learning to ride a bicycle, once you get the hang of it, it's best not to overthink its operations. Using your instincts, being considerate of your fellow travelers, and following the open road, the Tao can serve you well. In short, as my fellow worship associate David Fu would say, runs good. May it be so, and amen. Please rise in body or spirit to join our voices in hymn number 6 in the great hymnal, Just as Long as I Have Breath. Go forth then in the spirit of the Tao. Let life take you where it will. Use your instincts to steer you. Be considerate of your fellow travelers. Let them go their own way, and don't worry about getting there first. Don't try to fix things. Rejoice in the way things are. Follow the open road wherever it may lead. Go in peace, and amen.
I'll be with you.